All right, welcome everyone to the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Commission meeting. We are going to get started. So welcome to the folks in person and the folks online. My name is Estrella Steinberg. I was voted in as chair last meeting and alongside Vice Chair Commissioner Todd Abbott. So we're glad to continue to serve and given it's my first meeting, we're going to go slow as chair, but also very focused. So we're going to move now. Oh, and for any folks that haven't been to this space before, there's restrooms down the hall and that you're welcome to use. And we also have folks online that we sort of toggle between folks in person. So we're going to go now to roll call.
Commissioner Abbott?
Here.
Commissioner Chin?
Sorry, here.
Commissioner Kent? Here. Commissioner Martin?
Here.
Commissioner OG?
Here.
And Chair Steinberg?
Here.
Julia is going to be late.
Thank you. We're going to go now to our net land acknowledgement. The City of Albany recognizes that we occupy the land originally protected by the Confederated Villages of the Legion. We acknowledge the genocide that took place on these lands and make strides to repay the moral debt that is owed to this indigenous people, specifically the Ohlone tribe. We thank them for their contributions, which have transformed our community and will continue to bring forth growth and unity. The City of Albany commits to sustaining ongoing relationships with the tribe and together build a future for all that now make this their home. Now to our approval of minutes from February 8th.
I'm happy to move approval of the minutes from February 8th.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Okay. Commissioner Abbott?
Yes.
Commissioner Chin?
Yes.
Commissioner Kent?
Yes.
Commissioner Martin?
Yes.
And Commissioner OG?
Yes.
And Chair Steinberg?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go now to public comment. So for persons desiring to address the commission on an item that is not on the agenda, please note that everyone is limited to 3 minutes unless there's an even longer list of people raising their hands and wanting to speak. The Brown Act limits the commission's ability to take or discuss items that are not on the agenda. So therefore, we refer these for any comments possibly to a future meeting. And we are not able to respond right away, but we are certainly listening. Are there any public comments? Oh, please go ahead and step up to the podium and speak right into the mic.
Good evening. My name is Jahan Byrne, and I'm talking today about some agenda item back in December, the dog park proposal, which I will tell you, you were probably the only people who knew about it because it's been so uncommunicated to the residents and users of the dog park. The proposal itself was 4 layers deep into your website. Oh, good. That sounds much better. Thank you.
Can we start that? Should we start that again?
I can't even remember what I just said.
Okay. Oh, go ahead.
So I want to say real quickly, the very definition of a dog park is a double safety gate, right? We've been advocating for that for 10 years. City hasn't done it. In the last year, 2 dogs were killed at that gate, one from a dog attack and another which had been at that dog park every day for 2 years, a dog named Maisie, owner was Ralph, got spooked by a dog, ran out into the street, and was hit by and killed by a car. Okay? Those are preventable. Not everything's preventable, but the way that that is designed is terrible. And we've told you, the city, this, and it's just goes by them. Even the consultants you folks hired 2 years ago didn't even come to the dog park to get feedback on Prop 68. They didn't even know the dog park existed. They were with clipboards at Memorial Park. They never came over. I talked to them a little bit. There are 2 big problems with the proposal, and that's why we're going to ask you to ask the city to pull back. One is the location where they want to put the new gate. You're putting it right next to the baseball field and the bleachers, where there's all sorts of crowds and kids and noise. You're putting it, the entry has to go by the public garden and the picnic tables. It's the narrowest part of Carmel, right? So think about the congestion that's causing, or will cause. It's a terrible location. There's nothing wrong with the location now at that corner. Noise can be mitigated, residents' concerns can be mitigated by doing a safety gate there. And the other big problem is the small dog section they want to build, that's fine. But they're building it inside, so the small dogs actually have to go into the big dog park to get to the small dog park. That is not how a small dog park is supposed to work. It's supposed to have a completely separate entrance, so there is no interaction with dogs that could bully or bother them. But I don't know if they just don't have the money or they haven't done their research. But these are the kinds of issues that I think the public and the users of the dog park could really help with, right? There's not been a lot of proactivity in terms of getting feedback. And dog park people they're pretty intense people, right? So I'm sure you will have no problem getting feedback. So we'd ask you to ask the Public Works Department to put a stop to putting out that contract, rethink this, get some community feedback, talk to the neighbors, and redo this plan. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Do you have any other comments on non-agenda agenda items? In person? What about online, Jamira?
There's no hands raised online.
Okay, thank you. Okay, do we have any announcements from commissioners or staff?
If no commissioners have any announcements, I have one.
I might have one. I'm just pulling them up myself. Did you have one, Tom? No? Okay. Well, let's see. I think last meeting it was shared, and I know it kind of was confusing to me, and I want to clarify that the Codornices path is open to walk now, as the information I received. I'm not sure what that word, let me see here. So everything, we expect a completion of everything on that project within the next 2 weeks is what I got from a city staff member. So Codornices path. And if you have any more questions about that, reach out to us or the city. I also want to remind folks that the volleyball court pilot project that's a flex court over at Memorial Park is up and going, and you can provide feedback if you do use it and go there. Those are my announcements.
Okay, I have one announcement. The Friends of Albany Parks cleanup will be Saturday, March 23rd from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the Albany Greenway and Albany Loop on the corner of Portland and Masonic. So please come out and help us clean up your city.
That's great. I really enjoyed a cleanup I went to recently. Okay, is that anything, is that all from staff? Yes. Okay, we're going to move now into presentations. We have 2 on the agenda today. Our first one is design progress update on Albany Hill. And this presentation will be given by, can you tell me your name? Annika. Annika? Okay, wonderful. Well, we can hand it over to you now, Annika.
Yes, I'll go ahead and bring up the presentation for you.
This is the microphone I'm supposed to use?
Yes, please.
And just as a reminder, while Annika's getting set up, we go to presentation, commissioner questions, public comment, back to commissioner discussion, and then to any vote that there.
Hello, Jamira. There we go. Okay.
Yes.
Any vote that there may be. Or motion, I mean.
Is there a remote, or are you going to, do I just
tell
nod
me
at
and
you?
I'll go ahead and.
Okay. You're going to be busy because there's animations. So
Cool.
there'll be lots of arrows.
I'm prepared.
Just go like this or something. We'll get through it. We'll just go slow. Patience,
Yes.
please. Yeah, we put arrows in for excitement. If you push the button, there should be a title on this page.
Let's see.
Oh, nope. There we go. There we go. My name is Annika Swinehart. I am an associate principal at Restoration Design Group, and I'm here to bring you an update, commissioners, on our progress for the Albany Hill Forest Management and Habitat Restoration Plan. I'm speaking on behalf of the whole team. With me today is also Eric Stromberg, who's our principal landscape architect. And if you click the next one, Jamira. The project team is in collaboration with the City of Albany, Restoration Design Group, Nomad Ecology, Erin McDermott and Dana Terry, and Creekside Science, Stu Weiss. And I believe Stu will be calling in remotely online when he can. Chief Jim Boydo from the fire department has also been a very active participant in helping us with this plan. So thank you for your time, and you can push the next slide. This was our mandate from the city. It's just sort of a reminder to frame the conversation that we're having, which is that you are seeking a comprehensive plan for the phased removal of dead and dying eucalyptus trees on Albany Hill and the restoration of habitat for monarchs and native plants and wildlife in a way that creates self-sustaining ecosystems with low fire hazards and minimal maintenance requirements. Not, easy job, right? So that's the context of what we're trying to achieve here. Tonight, our session goals tonight in talking with you is to provide you an overview on the project progress, where we're at in the whole life of the project, and to share the design phase exercises that we're doing right now and present these priority explorations to you to help bring you along on the design process and to also help the public understand, as you could tell from the previous mandate, this project is going to require a lot of compromise and integrating lots of competing criteria to come up with the best possible solution for the City of Albany. We're also here to solicit input from you and the public. There are surveys at the back of the room that any member of the public can take some home, give to your friends to fill out to help us get feedback on this part of the design phase. They're also available online, and we'll get to that later. Next slide. Can you hit it again? So the project started out with the identification of the project and the problems back in 2020 and 2021. If you can hit it again, this is a little timeline. And then there was a big site assessment period. And sort of our last public meeting was really presenting what we had digested from all of these site assessments. There were arborist reports, water stress reports, pathogen reports, monarch butterfly habitat assessments, and fuel and fire hazard assessments. And so all that information was compiled together. We brought that to the public in a public education session, if you can push the next one. And that was in summer of 2023. We started an online survey. We did the community workshop in November. We did a community site walk out on the Hill. I think some of you may have come to that. And we're now, if you push the button again, and push it again, this is where we're at. March 2024. Today's presentation is this sort of central keystone piece in between the assessment, community priorities, and right before we start coming up with a final assembly for the plan. So we're in the middle of this design phase and plan development process. And if you push the button again, ta-da, implementation comes later. So we are kind of smack in the middle, and that's where we're at right now. If you can go to the next one. And so this particular phase of the project, from the feedback we got from the public and from the committee and from our consultants, we established what the priority criteria were for Albany Hill. And rather than starting from a place of compromise and trying to figure out and assume we knew what the best combination of those things were, we talked to the consultants and the experts, and we wanted to explore what options might exist if we took each of those priority areas and just said, you have free reign. This is an intellectual exercise, it's a design exercise. We want to see what's possible. If all we care about is monarchs, if all we care about is fire, what are our options? What's the best possible solution for you? And so by doing that, we are hoping that we will end up with a much better, stronger final composition for the city, in that it will allow us to unveil or discover certain options or possibilities that we may have left on the table if we hadn't done that. So next page. And what we're asking for is for you to listen to all of these three explorations with the understanding that none of what we're presenting is an actual proposal. These are tools of discovery. We are bringing you with us on the design process as an update. And we really value finding out what your priorities are, and when you look at these three explorations, which parts of them grab you, which are most important to you and to the city, and which ones, maybe raise your eyebrows a little bit. We want to hear that too. So again, surveys at the back of the room and online. And for those of you listening remotely, please do go online and fill those out and give us your feedback. Next slide. Push it again. So you can just keep tapping. So this is sort of what we're doing. We're going to be talking about fire safety, monarchs, habitat. None of those are going to be the final plan. What we're going to do is pull sort of the best components of all three of those into the final project. Next one. And you can hit it again. So existing conditions, just as a refresher and a reminder of what we're actually talking about. We're not talking about the entirety of Albany Hill, we're just talking about the city property on Albany Hill. And this is an aerial view with the project area in color. And there's two sections pulled through it, one running north-south and one running east-west. And if you go to the next slide, the image you're seeing here is a sort of a pie slice, a section through Albany Hill looking north. And it shows where the private property is and where the project extents that we're talking about are. And if you go to and push it again, you'll see a little, push it again, Taft. So there's your orientation. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see the section running the other way. I think there's one more arrow on this one, maybe. Push it again. Oh, yeah, so that's looking the other direction. And this slice, this section where you see these very realistic looking trees, Stu Weiss, who is the monarch expert, was able to get LiDAR data flown over Albany Hill, which gives us very realistic 3D models of the trees. And so we have tremendous data to work with in terms of fine-tuning what we're removing where, what that's going to look like, where there's understory, where there's sufficient gap for the monarchs. And if you go to the next slide, this is actually an animation, and I'm hoping it'll play. Push the button again. And so what you're seeing, I think, yeah, it'll fly around. This is the topography of Albany Hill with a map, aerial map draped over it, and you can see a yellow line around the ridge. And it may hang a little bit because of the Wi-Fi, but bear with. And so the yellow line you're seeing is the project area. Oh, come on, Internet, you can do it. You can do it. And as it comes around, what you'll see is the project area trees will turn on, and so you'll get a visual of the trees that are actually on city property that we're talking about. And as it rotates around, the rest of the trees will come on to give you the context, maybe. We'll see. You can maybe just click in the middle so we can get a reveal on the timeline bar. Down at the bottom, yeah, will it advance? I don't know, loading. But this presentation will be loaded onto the City of Albany website, and these are available for you in the meeting folder as well if you want to watch the video at your own. There you go. Anyway, the point is that we have really fine detailed information in LiDAR, and we're able to do models and cut sections and look at all this. There's your beautiful hill. And right now, the eucalyptus are smashed flat, but they'll pop up. If you go to the end, maybe it'll just load and give you the still shot. Anyway, this was going to be the big jazz hands moments. You're going to have to imagine in your head a little bit, but that's all right. I'm looking at my tech wizard if he has any more tips. I think it's just the Internet.
Just keep going and we'll try.
Yeah, we'll come back. It'll load while we do the rest. Oh, there we go. There you go. There's some trees. That's what we're talking about. So those are the trees that are inside the project area in the site area. So we can go to the next slide, and we'll come back and try and run it after it's loaded. Or is it not going to let you? There you go. Okay, and then hit it again. First thing we're going to talk about is, it's okay, fire safety. We're talking about this one first. So we sat down with Chief Boydo, said, okay, if you could do whatever you wanted on the Hill, what would that be? And to his credit, he's like, well, we have to think about, and he listed 18 things, and I'm like, bear with me. It's an intellectual exercise. And so we did it, and this is the fire safety model that we came up with. If you click on the next one, this was the question we posed, is, what would be the long-term ideal vision for Albany Hill, what components would be a priority, and what changes would best protect Albany citizens and the environment from fire. So next slide. And the fire department priorities are good access to the Hill for fire department equipment and personnel, disconnecting canopy and understory to interrupt fire ladders, and also a very large priority for the fire department is to have Albany Hill be an aesthetic, beautiful, enjoyable park. so that fire safety can be modeled as both an enjoyable space and a beautiful public space and something that's safe. So they really want to have the Albany Hill management model be something that can be looked to as a template for how to do this right, how to do it beautifully, and how to still have a functioning park with shade and canopy and enjoyable spaces. So that is a very strong priority for them. And also to remove the eucalyptus and replace them with more appropriate canopy species that don't cause as much concern. So next slide. And this is just a quick reminder on what we mean when we say fire ladders. Fire ladders are when a ground fire or a canopy fire can pass from the canopy to the ground or back. And eucalyptus in particular are a problem because they shed highly flammable bark, they accumulate leaf litter which does not decompose readily, they have weak limbs, the eucalyptus globulus specifically, and they're great at creating fire ladders. They do it very, very well. Next slide. And on steep terrain, it's different. You end up having to have different spacing because of that, because what's a canopy, if you're on a steep slope, as you see on the bottom one, you end up needing more distance between those trees in order to maintain that gap. So part of our challenge on Albany Hill is how to maintain fire-safe distances and spacing between our planting or our new trees to sort of keep those fuel ladders disconnected. Next slide. The priority tree removal list is something that was on that timeline that we were tasked with as sort of a precursor to doing this project. The implementation date is down the road. We're still in the design process, but there are some imminent threats and dangers on Albany Hill, both for the homeowners and for the city, and for liability reasons. So we took the arborist reports, the fire analysis, and overlaid that and came up with a list for 100 and 150 trees that are sort of tagged for ASAP triage if we can. And importantly, no trees that were currently within monarch clustering sites or windbreak trees were included in this removal list. So any trees that are currently being used by monarchs are not part of the priority tree removal. What is part of the priority tree removal list? If you click on the next slide, those areas that were red were trees where there was a residential target, where if the tree fails, it's going to take out someone's house. The trees that were in orange, if you go back one, just to show the graphic again, the ones that are sort of in yellow, those are trees that have torching problems, where if those trees catch fire, they can throw embers deep into Albany. So those are the ones that pose the most risk to the most number of people in terms of fire spread. So those were the ones that we and there's some overlap between those two, and that's where it's orange on that diagram. So you can tab forward twice, then we can go to the next one. So the plan that we came up with, if all we cared about was fire, if you go to the next slide, this is phase one, and just keep tapping. We'll go through it. This red band is to create a fuel break between property that the city has no control over. There's an enormous eucalyptus stand on that side of the hill that we have no control over what happens on private property. The chief can make recommendations, but we can't say what they're going to do with it. So creating a fuel break between private property and city property is a priority. And those are where the orange arrows are pointing. The red arrows are pointing at removals that would happen to, again, create a fire break between houses, property, and those trees. So this overlaps quite a lot with the priority fire removal list you just saw, but it includes that band on the bottom of the page between city property and private property. Next slide. And so phase two, and just keep tapping it. I'll walk through them. The orange area is phase two, and this is where eucalyptus removals would still happen. It would be done more selectively. We would be keeping, there's oaks in this area that we would want to keep to maintain that park-like character and to keep this, it would be fire safe, but it would still be aesthetically pleasing. And there's native understory in here that the fire department would like to keep and retain. So that's the orange area. And we would be doing some new oak planting in this area for that park-like feel. Push it again for phase three. Keep pushing that button. Here we go. And so the yellow would be phase three, and that would be limbing up and pruning of this area during phase one. Again, some of those trees are on the ridge and are a major concern in terms of fire spread. And as these eucalyptus would fail, we would remove them, and we would leave this area largely open, reusing the eucalyptus as much as possible to mulch and control invasive grasses. In terms of the fire department, having the mulch chips be larger, so they're less likely to create heat or combust, larger chip sizes, and going not as deep as we might in some of the other explorations, specifically to prevent any risk of fire, but keeping the fire road open and doing removals here last. If you can push the button again. This is also a consideration we'll have to take into account as we move forward with the final plan, which is that Albany Hill neighborhoods are wild urban interfaces, and there's going to be a new fire hazard severity zone map for local responsibility areas issued soon. It's not out yet, but the fire department knows it's about to be issued, and when it is issued, they are anticipating there will be more stringent criteria for Albany Hill vegetation management than what we have currently. So we'll be needing to incorporate these incoming criteria into whatever the final management plan is. We just don't know what they might be yet. If you can click the next one. So we have pros and cons for all these. Pros on this one, it reduces fire risk, it reduces liability, and it'll provide a wonderful model for how to do defensible space and still have a beautiful park adjacent to neighborhoods. And there's still plenty of eucalyptus stands on Albany Hill on private property for the monarchs. If you click it again. Cons, if we remove all of the eucalyptus from Albany Hill, monarch habitat will shift to private property, which will reduce visible public access to those cluster sites, and those cluster sites will no longer be on the ridge. Another con is that understory extents and composition is driven by fuel models, not by habitat opportunities. Next one, cost implications. This model is probably the least expensive model. It doesn't have specific criteria for removals. There's no active habitat restoration happening. Replacement trees are oaks. It's fairly simple. So this is the least expensive one. Next. And push the button again and a little arrow will fly up. Next, we're going to talk about native habitat. And we asked the same question to Nomad. If no other factors were at play, what would be the ideal configuration and action plan to foster an ecologically diverse island in the city and a haven for wildlife? That was the charge. Next slide. And again, this is just a reminder that Albany Hill is an ecological island and sort of a real rare gem in the East Bay. It is the only significant topographical feature that is immediately adjacent to the bay, so it has very specific microclimates and an ecology that's fairly rare. It's a bit of a treasure. Next slide. What's there now? We've got coast live oak woodlands, we've got eucalyptus forest, we've got grassland openings, and we've got riparian zones at the north and east end of the hill. Next slide. What do we want to bring forward? We would love to have oak woodland with shrubs and open oak grassland areas and native coastal grasslands. Next slide. So, and again, this is one that I would have been clicking through, so you can just turn them all on and I'll talk through it. So the dark green areas that you see here are areas that have been assessed as being really strong potential for oak woodlands with a grassland understory. There's plenty of existing understory shrubs, some really good native plants that are present, and this would be a place that would be easy to expand with those removals. And the little skinny area you see pointing to those white dots, those are existing snags, existing dead stumps that we would want to leave in place for habitat, for bats, for roosting, for insects, to just keep those in place. We would not remove those. Next one. And so the next type, which is this, go back, yeah, which are this green area where the yellow arrow is pointing. This area of the hill would be great for an open oak woodland with shrub understory. There's already some native shrubs there, and the slope and the aspect in the soil, this kind of a habitat ecosystem would do great here. And so this is what we'd want to develop there. If you can click the next slide. There's an example of some beautiful toyon on the hill. Click the next slide. And native grasslands, which are the pale green you see in the center of that slide. And just keep clicking that button, Jamaria. These areas have tremendous potential for restoration as a native grassland, and we would want to retain existing natives as much as possible. and plant patches of new native species to inoculate the site. We would focus on invasive plant suppression between these new native planting areas. Open grasslands are fairly rare, and they support a tremendous number of species, pollinators, birds, insects, plants, and this would be a much more active restoration zone where we would be suppressing invasives, but also bringing in new plants into these areas up on the ridge. Next slide. How do we restore these habitat types? This is a long list of them, but basically you enhance what's already there. You do very selective removals. You do surveys before the eucalyptus removal. You fence off the things you want to save. You prioritize and minimize ground disturbance. You use the eucalyptus mulch extensively for invasive weed control and soil stabilization. And we could even reuse eucalyptus logs to create planting opportunities by creating slightly flatter areas and using them as steps. So we could create some little planting pockets. And just keep hitting that button so we get an arrow. Yeah, so the dots you're seeing here are areas that we've identified as being places we would want to do selective eucalyptus removal. And what does that mean? I think if you keep pushing the button, more words will come up, but this is where you would send out pre-removal surveys to fence off and protect existing native species that are already there. We would define drag routes and exit routes for the removal contractor to reduce the loss of natives and to reduce soil disturbance. It would be a much more prescribed effort on the part of a contractor, not sort of a general go in and take them out. Keep going to the next one. And the stripes that you see, there's the arrow, these would be more general eucalyptus removal areas. There isn't as much precious understory there, and so this could be more of a go in and take them out without having as many criteria and rules about how they do it. And go to the next slide. And so these are some photos, and there's some arrows if you push on it, Jamira. This is an example of where we have eucalyptus stands without any native understory. It's mostly invasive grass and open, and these are areas where you can do much less careful removals. Next slide. We would want to create future snags for wildlife, and how high the snags are, I mean, it says 8 to 12 on the slide, but we would probably want to keep them lower just to keep stump sprouting suppression down. But the idea would be that while we're removing the eucalyptus, we would want to leave existing snags where they are and create some new ones for habitat. And if you go to the next slide, the pros of this particular exploration is that it creates a complex California native habitat mosaic on a very unique landform near the bay. It provides for multi-species benefits. It creates resources for future restoration efforts in Albany, and it maximizes opportunities for cultural use, both tribal, educational, and research opportunities, and it maximizes opportunities for community and tribal participation. With an active restoration model, there's planting days, there's seed collection, there's a lot more hands-on activity in that area. If you go to the next slide. Cons, monarch habitat will shift to private property, which reduces visible public access, much more complex maintenance tasks for this one, because it's an active restoration model, more intensive efforts for native understory protection during treatment and removals, and it would have more competency requirements for the contractor. Next slide. All of those things together would make this concept exploration, if it existed in the real world, the most expensive one, because it would have the most criteria for competency, the most complicated directions, and we would be doing plant amplification, seed collecting, and contract growing. So next slide. And if you push it, we get an arrow. Monarchs, we're finally to the monarchs. We saved them for last. So monarchs, just a quick review, what they really want and why they're here: solar access and wind protection. Creekside Science is Stuart Weiss, our lovely consultant. And this is a picture of the ancestral condition of where monarchs, when they used to fly up the coast before eucalyptus arrived, they would cluster in Monterey pines and other tall trees. They need to be able to see the tree from the coast, get there, and have enough sun and nectar and things to be happy. So next one. And this is just an overview of the East Bay overwintering sites. And AH is Albany Hill. That's our special little spot. And this is sort of the suite of where we find the monarchs in the bay. Next slide. So the question we asked Stu was, if there were no other factors at play, what would be the ideal configuration and action plan for Albany Hill to continue to provide overwintering habitat for monarchs on the ridge? So next slide. And luckily, and quite happily, the yellow arrows are pointing out a no impacts to monarch zone. So these areas of eucalyptus stand, monarchs don't use them, they're facing the wrong way. It just, whatever we do over here with our forest management plan will have no impact on the monarchs. And you can see at the bottom, there's some dashed white circles. Those are the areas that monarchs are currently utilizing on private property just downslope. So there's a monarch use area, a monarch windbreak, and a monarch windbreak. And that's part of what they need, that combination of protection from the wind and sun. You can click the button again. So these areas in pink are the areas on city property that the monarchs are currently using. The windbreak is up on the ridge, and the cluster site is where it says monarch use area. Next slide. Arrows just point, just keep pushing them, we'll get there. And so the main thing here, the main thing for this one is that we would retain the existing eucalyptus in those areas that are coded hot pink to be used for clustering and to provide wind protection. And we would plant replacement eucalyptus now, or a more appropriate species, to anticipate the failure of the existing trees they're currently using. We can't just leave the trees that are up there now. They're going to fail. They're not healthy, they're not well, and we need to find a replacement for that. And we would also be planting ground cover nectar sources in the open areas, around these clustering areas. So you can go to the next slide. What do we plant for the future? Replacement trees need to have a better fire profile. They need to reduce ground fuels and not create fire ladders. They need to be drought tolerant and adapted to a rocky coastal soil profile, but they still need to provide the morphology needed for monarch use, and they need to be less invasive. We do not want to plant a future problem. And the project may test several species. If you can go to the next slide. So this is what's up there now, Eucalyptus globulus, the Tasmanian blue gum, and if you click on the button again, you'll get a very helpful yellow arrow. There it is. They have, again, you can see the sprouting all the way down, very shaggy bark, very deep litter. If you click on the next slide, all those things are true. This is one of the proposed replacements for those monarch trees, which is Eucalyptus diversicolor. This has been successfully planted on state land in other parks where there have been clustering sites. And you can already tell just from looking at these photos, they have a very different morphology. It's still enough to work for the monarchs, but they tend to be more vase-shaped. These are not pruned. They have a very different limb structure. And so you have a more natural fire ladder break for those eucalyptus. They are not from Tasmania. They come from Western Australia and from a much drier, rockier climate. They're used to drought. They're used to poor soils. If you can click on the next slide. Another option is a Catalina ironwood. Maybe. We're still looking at this. It's fairly hard to find tall trees that are native to California that would work on Albany Hill. It was not an overwintering site before the eucalyptus arrived. So it's kind of a tough overlap. The ironwood would not be invasive. It's a California native, but it's not from here. It's from Catalina Island. So it's used to high winds. It's used to bad soils. It has the right leaf shape, but we don't know if it would work. So next slide. So these monarch support areas, if you push the button, it'll go through are these dark purple areas. And these are areas where we would be planting a new windbreak. The dark purple on the right is where the cross came down, and there's currently a gap in the wind. And one of the things that would help the monarch use areas to have that area have a windbreak in it of some variety. So we'd be planting new plants there. And we would be removing the existing E. globulus trees in these dark purple areas and planting the diversicolor or another tree and putting in ground plane nectar sources. So again, this is in the fantasy land of all we care about is monarchs. This is what we would do to maximize a happy monarch on Albany Hill. And if you go to the next slide, pros, it maintains the structures and resources needed to support current use patterns by monarchs. Albany Hill remains a special area for public viewing of monarch overwintering, and it does not prevent the removal of failing Eucalyptus globulus in many, many areas on the hill. If you click on the next one, con, eucalyptus stands remain in high fire risk areas. Stands that are retained may continue to expand into city property unless actively curtailed and controlled. We're going to be introducing a new exotic species if we do plant the diversicolor. Risk of limb fall and other liability issues are still in play over public access areas, and it does not provide a fuel break between the privately owned eucalyptus stands and those retained on city property. So if you click, and this is the middle baby in terms of costs. It has general and selective removal strategies. It has a lot fewer removals than other exploration areas, but we would still be doing new planting. So it's a little bit of both in terms of the cost implications. If you can go to the next one. So again, none of these concept explorations are what we're proposing to do, but all of these overlays and all of these criteria are going to give us the tools to start looking at where are we in alignment? How can we provide the best possible solution for all of these priority areas without sacrificing too much in any direction? So the project is going to be a combination of the best elements of all of these, but we're definitely going to have to compromise. So that's our next task. And if you click on the next slide, this is sort of a loose summary of sort of the pros, the cons, the costs, like the things that we're weighing and balancing. Again, none of these are concrete proposals. These are design explorations and idea explorations to help us tease out where the sweet spot is for all of them. And if you go to the next slide, this is what's coming up next. There's a QR code for those of you online. You can click it with your phone. There's also a survey in the back. Go to the Albany Hill website. We really want to hear back from everyone. What are your priorities for Albany Hill? What are your pain points? What do you hope for? What do you want? And that will help us look at and weigh all of these criteria and opportunities. There's a lot of, if you go back through the slideshow again and you look at those colored areas, there's a lot of them that align. There's a lot of really good news in this design exercise. And so that's how we're looking at it. And we're going to be pulling all of that together and coming back to you later in the spring with sort of a proposed combined plan to talk through those different points. But this way, you'll have a better understanding of the compromises we needed to make and why, and what all of those areas could be, and also what their limitations are. So with that, thank you very much for your time. I realize that was long, but it's an important hill, and it's a wonderful project, and we want to drag you along with us. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That's a lot of work, and we really appreciate it. We're going to go now to any clarifying questions from commissioners, and we'll go to public comment after that, and then back to the commission for discussion. So are there any clarifying questions?
I just had one quick one, and you may have mentioned this, may have just mentioned it, but during the fire exercise, you mentioned a more stringent criteria coming. Is that coming from the state or federal, or where's that coming from?
Annika, would you mind coming back, please?
And Chair Steinberg, just so you know, we do have Chief Boydo online if you would like him to come.
Yeah, I was going to say this might be a great question for Chief Boydo, because it's I think it's a little bit of both, but I would let him answer that.
Okay.
Chief, you're on.
Good evening, everybody. How are we doing?
Good, thank you.
All right. We are going to have a staged, or the quick answer is yes. There's going to be requirements that we're not allowed to deviate from unless the city council decides not to adopt them, which will not be my recommendation based on the public safety and the preserving property and habitat and all those pieces. So we're not exactly sure how stringent it's going to be. It took almost 3 years for the state to come up with the requirements or finalize the requirements for the state responsibility area. This is going to be the local responsibility area, which is also known as LRA. But it's going to more than likely include building material changes, types of windows potentially if you live on or adjacent to the hill. Also ember resistant treatments to your home on your gutters and your vents to make sure nothing gets into to clog your gutters with leaves to catch on fire and those types of things. So The quick answer is they are coming, but I don't have the exact answer of what they will be for the city of Albany.
Great, thank you.
So with the same, I mean, in the presentation, it was mentioned that we can't do anything about the private property. But it sounds like there's a lot of regulation that coming down the pike that does control private property. And because there's no sense in doing all this protection measure on top of the hill when you have all that leaf litter and build up debris on the.
That is a serious challenge. The scope of the project is only to deal with the city forest on city property on top of the hill. Part of the hope of having this project look good and feel good and be a model is that that is then a tool for the fire chief and other people to make recommendations to and encourage behavior or choices by. But in terms of the scope of this project and what our mandate is, we really can only make changes to what's on city property. And that's part of why I think the chief was recommending making sure we have a fuel break between the private property and the city property.
So the LR, was it LRD or LR?
The local responsibility areas, the
Right.
LRA?
That's just a volunteer type.
I would let Chief Boydo answer that. I don't know that it is voluntary. I think if you opt out of it, there are consequences, and if you opt in, there are benefits, but I'll let him answer that.
The LRA simply means local responsibility area. We as a city and our policymakers and adopters in the council are going to be the ones to decide what level of requirements will be imposed. For the private property owners, I will add that all of the HOAs of the condominium complexes are very interested in doing their part to make their properties as fire safe as possible, but also with the requirements that come from potentially being a habitat for an endangered species and the monarch butterfly. So it's a complicated area. There's also the cost pieces. Us doing this, as has been stated already, is going to set an example of best practices and hopefully not break the bank for the private property owners to comply. But I don't see us getting away from this. We live in especially with climate change, we live in a fire-prone region in the whole state of California, and changes are coming to how extensive they are, how stringent they are, remains to be seen, though.
I had a follow-up question for the chief. So it sounds like these state regulations would impact this proposed, I guess it is, state regulations would impact the people on the west side of the hill and the big condos, but would also impact the people on the eastern side of the hill, more with single-family homes and smaller condos. And do you see those as being implemented as like mandated things that people have to do in a certain time frame, or it's more like if it's new construction and on that same lot or a major remodel, you have to also do all these other things?
That remains to be seen exactly how that's going to be implemented. In all honesty, there's still way too many items to be worked out. A lot of it's in the California Fire Code, and it's in Chapter 49 is where the regulations are. I would want to phase things in through new construction, and remodeling is always an easier way to do things because people will know what's coming for them, or not for them, but to their project. And this isn't just things that are going to be in the area of the hill neighborhoods or adjacent neighborhoods to the hill. There's also going to be requirements for ember casts throughout the city. So there'll be a little bit of, and for that piece, it's things like having filters for your gutters and your vents to make sure embers don't get into those areas. Along the hill, it's going to be more about the exterior of your building to make sure it's fire resistant, that you have multi-pane windows, that you have the Class A comp roofing or non-flammable roofing. The clearance between vegetation in your home will have requirements as well. So I don't have an exact answer, except something is coming. How we implement it is going to be, will be more to come for that. Sorry for a kind of a fuzzy answer, but we're still learning as we go right now.
Can you say what kind of time frame it is for these guidelines, regulations to be finalized, and then the city to begin looking at implementing?
I wish I had a hard timeline. We were told a year ago we would be getting the local responsibility area mapping, and that would start the timeline. We're looking at, from what I'm hearing from the state fire marshal, we are approximately 6 to 9 months away from receiving their preliminary report, and from there it will be time to present to the council, all the committees, so that you all can think about it and give recommendations, and then we would go to the council and they would make a decision. So if these things happen within the next 12 to 18 months, I think we're more towards 18 months, at least the timeline that we've had. But it isn't if, it's when these regulations are coming.
One final follow-up question on that is, if say, for some reason, every tree on Albany Hill was cut down, and for some reason, that was the decision that all private landowners made and the city made, and everybody followed through with that, would these new fire regulations still be required for homeowners near the hill or throughout the city, or because the East Bay Hills also exist, or something?
It's where the homes are at, so it's the location of the homes and our environmental reality at this point. We're in a fire-prone state. There's some very good resources on the on the California Fire Chiefs website. There's some very good presentations. Sorry for I have a loud dog right now, so hopefully it's not coming across and interrupting what I'm saying. But the California Fire Chiefs Association has a area of information regarding vegetation management. One of our own Albany residents and the chief of Moraga-Orinda Fire Department, Chief Winokur, is a subject matter expert on this. And the state used to burn millions of more acres per year. It doesn't do that. We are very good at putting fires out. The abundance of fuel plus the change in climate getting hotter has made it to where we are in a fire-prone area. Even though we can look at high-rises in San Francisco and in Oakland and on the west side of Albany Hill and be in a very much an urban area, we are not in what most would think when they think of wildfires, in a rural area with acres of trees and very few houses. And so it's reached the bay. So it's a matter of when, not if they are coming. And it has nothing to do with what vegetation is on the hill overall. It's how close it is to structures, and then what the structures are protected or made out of on the exterior.
Let's get, we should move on to the comment, if that's okay.
I still have a few more questions.
Are they technical questions about the agenda?
Yeah.
I mean, the comment? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so another question for the fire chief, I just realized, is as we are making decisions, as the city council is making decisions, as the consultants are making decisions as to where fire breaks, where trees are removed on the hill, for example, the one proposal was to have fire breaks around, would the decisions the city makes on how far the vegetation is from those homes have any bearing on what the homeowners there, for example, along Taft Street, would need to do for their fire regulations? Do those homeowners need to pay attention to these meetings and have some input on which trees are removed or not? Do they have a stake in how much work they need to do to fireproof their own homes?
Oh, they definitely have a stake, and not just from city regulations, but as you've probably seen in the news, where people's fire insurance is not getting renewed, and they're ending up with the state plan as their fire insurance. So they will have a stake in the game. It's their castle, so they get to make decisions. But we also have a city ordinance in the municipal code that talks about vegetation management. The state's regulations are going to more than likely supersede that. And so there will be conversations and a collaborative effort to make everyone's home as fire safe as possible from wildfires.
Okay, so it sounds like it doesn't matter how big of a fire break we make, these homes will still need to do whatever they need to, the regulations won't change for them. That's what I'm hearing.
There's a really good, there's a initiative called Zone Zero that talks about a very good fire safe and vegetation management around the home, but still providing for an aesthetically pleasing look as well. So it isn't, and by fire break, it isn't, what we're trying to do is keep the low fuels from getting into the upper fuels. So when we say fire break, it isn't necessarily going to mean bare mineral earth 20 feet from a house and no vegetation around the house. It's making sure that a fire that starts in the ground doesn't get up above to cause a very large fire that's difficult to control, both at the spot of the fire and also where the embers might go, the block over, 2 blocks over, 3 blocks over.
Okay. One other question I had for the presenter was, for tree removals, the city normally attempts to avoid removing trees during nesting season, and you said spring seems ideal before June. Do you know if that avoids nesting issues? And is this talking about removals in spring 2024 or maybe 2025 or something?
The comment about removals for the fire was mostly to talk about what's ideal from the standpoint of the fire department, which would be to get removals done before fire season. We have a whole document of best management practices from Nomad Ecology about bat roosting, nesting, bird nesting. All those things will be taken into account into the real final plan. It's more that when removals happen, there's a different priority for each group. Like in terms of habitat, there's an ideal window for tree removal. For fire, there's an ideal window for tree removal. And for monarchs, don't remove some of them, but we don't care about the rest of them, but it's about looking at that overlay and coming up with what the actual project window would be.
Okay.
So.
Thanks. And then also for you was one of the proposals, I think, for the fire prioritization was removing current monarch habitat on city property. What is Stuart Weiss coming on the call later, or is he?
No, Stuart, I think he is on the call, or he was going to try and call in. I think he had some conflicting things. But again, this isn't a proposal. The city of Albany is still under the same guidelines as everyone else who has a federally listed
Proposal was maybe
plant.
the wrong word, but one of the
Explorations
was to do that. And I would be curious to hear what he has to say about how likely it is the monarchs would move down to private land. And then if that were to happen, are there any limitations on what the private landowner can do to remove trees on their own land? Could they then decide to remove all the trees to reduce their liability on fire?
Jameer, is Stu on the call? Because if not, I can answer those.
No, I don't see us.
Okay. So I think the first question was about
how likely
how monarchs use, so the monarchs are on private property right now, like they actively use it. And when they use the hill, when they use the ridge, isn't for constant overwintering, it's when the weather's nice, it's before weather really turns. They'll be up there. If the winds pick up or if it rains, they head downhill for shelter. So their main overwintering site is on private property. They use the ridge as sort of like a seasonal hangout. When it's nice up there, that's where they want to be. When it's not, they book downhill. And the second question was about...
Yeah, if the city removes all of its trees, eucalyptus trees where monarchs are now on the city's property. Wondering, does the private landowner where the monarch identified trees are have any restrictions whatsoever, or could they remove trees on their own?
I mean, the city and the private landowners are under the same restrictions in terms of federally protected species. So the explorations were just about, if nothing else mattered in the world, what would be ideal? So it's just a design overlay. No one's actually proposing that we remove the clustering habitats on the ridge. It's a matter of like, how do we replace them? The trees they're on are going to die. But the regulations around monarchs apply to the city of Albany and the private landowners equally.
And is there some official designation that that private land is monarch habitat?
Details of that. I do.
Very simple, short ones. So
Folks are never going to get
Appearances how opportunistic the monarchs are. And it was why the monarchs being at the top of the hill where the been monitoring them since 1990. And the advantage of the top of the hill is that it is accessible for the public who turned in reports to the native, there were grasses, the plantain. It was like looking at a field of wildflowers. And it was these wonderful monarchs' homes. And they were very cooperative. That grant that we had, interesting, it was a government grant, but it did allow some of that work to be done on private land because it was dedicated as open space. So I think there's a very high possibility that we'll be able to work with the landowners successfully.
Thank you, Carol.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next, if we have another public comment, please come to the podium. Welcome, Commissioner Julia.
Hi, I'm Michael Gold. I'm another volunteer. Disaster prep, monarchs, grassland restoration, not in Albany yet, hopefully. The point about the lowest fuel load, there was a remark about the cons. What was the downside of the fire chief's idea? I'm not advocating for any particular idea, but just looking at this fine work you've done, something about the lowest fuel load. Well, the lowest fuel load is wildflowers and native grass. There isn't anything lower unless you pave it with concrete, as far as I know. So I'm not sure that there was a con there about an understory composed of what used to grow there. Native habitat priority model, it's kind of ironic that the plan that maximizes grassland also minimized monarch habitat. So it seemed to me. Now, I did not see many monarchs west of the summit this year or last year. There was one occasion when they first showed up. They were clustered on trees on the south, around the edge of the southwest meadow. After that, they moved uphill. I agree with what you said about them showing up on the western slope when it gets windy, but not as much as all that. I never saw more than 10 butterflies west of the summit, except the balcony immediately west of the sitting circle. The new urban wildland fire code, it seems to implicate private property. I agree, and I appreciate what Jeff said, but I think it's important. My perspective is that the city has designated this as open space. I could be wrong, but my impression is it's not in their power to build there. And if we were to offer them an incentive in the amount of money that we were going to spend anyway, we might build a fire break that's monarch safe and doesn't affect the use as a park. Most of it isn't monarch habitat. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Do you have any comments online?
No hands are raised online.
Okay, we're going to move back to commissioner discussion, and just as a reminder, this is not a motion, an item for possible action. It's discussion, and it's for our speakers here to really listen to this and take this back to the work that you do. So are there any commissioner comments in public discussion?
I was just going to say, I look forward to seeing the finalized presentation shared with us and on the city website, I believe, is where it's going to be. And that animation, I'll try it at home and see how my Wi-Fi is. And looks like a lot of good work already. I look forward to seeing it again later in the spring in front of this commission, and then you said in front of the city council in the summer, and yeah.
It just seems to me that even though it's interesting to see the various exercises, it's already a foregone conclusion that it's going to be a nuanced plan. We can't take out the monarch, not that we want to, but if we can't take out the monarch habitat because it's protected, then I don't know why we're doing exercise to show it removed. And obviously, we would want to remove the trees that might fall on the residents. So there's some things that are kind of almost foregone conclusions. And then there's the big swatch of land which isn't monarch habitat. It isn't necessarily right next to the houses that I think most would agree would be restored to native habitat. I'm just making a kind of assumption here. And then there was the cost item of 1, 2, and 3, and we don't know what that's 3 times as much or half as much or 1.1 times more than we have no idea what the costs are, and maybe you guys haven't done that yet. It seems like we're already in the middle, which is due to a nuanced plan, and that's kind of where you guys are going, right?
We are in the middle.
Yeah, right, okay. Thank you for putting us there. I guess you had to show us extremes to get us there.
I did have a question, and it's kind of following up on one of the speakers, but it's also something I wanted to ask before, and that is to what degree the requirements of restoring natural habitat conflict with the fire needs. I see that, like the Toyon could be considered part of a ladder, it seems like to me, but other than that, it seems like that's obvious. That's the obvious solution, is to have as much native, but that also meets the requirements of the fire, or the desires of the fire plan. Did you have any idea of, if not, that's fine.
Do we want to, are we answering? How do we approach this?
Sure.
They can answer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, we wouldn't let you.
I did do debate at some point, but there's parts of the native habitat structure that would be fire prone. A lot of California native landscapes were fire dependent, and fire was part of the natural process, and it's how certain systems functioned and renewed themselves. And while that's important and good and solid ecologically, that isn't necessarily what you want in a wild urban interface. And so the line we're trying to walk is we want to create as much native habitat as we can that's as ecologically sound, self-maintaining, and all of that, but recognizing and understanding that this is not a place where we can really manage with fire because of its proximity to this urban interface. So it's a little bit of a balance. We're not doing habitat restoration in open space that's far away from where anyone lives. We're doing it smack in the middle of your city. Sure. So there is some nuance to that, and it isn't just necessarily a one-to-one overlay. And to Commissioner Kent's comment, like there are some kind of, they look obvious and easy, but there's also some nuance in there of, if we're going to keep the current cluster sites, what do we replace it with and at what spacing, and what would the understory look like, and is looking to the ecological consultants and the fire consultants to figure out what that best overlay is. It's never going to, it's probably not going to be just one thing. So we're really trying to pull all those pieces together to make the best decision possible.
And then just before you go, a kind of a related question, and as we talk about restoring the native habitat, well, due to climate change, this habitat is changing. So it makes a lot of sense that we might choose something that isn't, perhaps was right here, but was a little further south or a little drier climate. Is that the way it's thinking, or are we not anticipating that much of a?
I think our firm tends to stay on the side of not engaging in hubris. We don't actually know what's going to come. We know it's changing, but we don't know in what direction or to what degree.
You're in the wrong industry for not being hubris.
I know. Like, I'm not going to be on a recorded call and tell you what's happening with climate change in 10 years. So we try not to sort of plant in anticipation of a future we're not certain of. We try and plant things that have adapted to this area, that are known to occur and thrive here, and do our best to let them live a long and healthy life and give them the time to do that. And I can see Eric coming up here. I'll let him address it with better words.
Somebody with some hubris.
Everything, so this is Eric Stromberg. I work with Annika, and everything she said is true, but the other thing, one way to think about it is, even on the topography of Albany Hill, you have southern exposure, northern exposure. Between those two, there's enough habitat change that's quite different, that is probably for climate change, for our kind of immediate planning purposes, we have the toolbox there.
Oh, very interesting.
So I don't think we need to necessarily take something from Southern California to solve this problem. I think we have it just locally.
Very cool, thank you.
I have a couple of comments. I'll start with the questions, and Annika, this is, or for you, or I guess whoever from the team. So kind of in line with our land acknowledgement and the opportunity at hand, has there been engagement with local tribal representatives or Native peoples around the management plan specifically for the management plan?
Yeah, Margot Cunningham has been doing tremendous work and has been working with Deja, and we did a walk around the hill with her.
Or can you say who Deja is?
Deja Gould, she's a tribal member who
thank you.
Works closely with Margot. And so we've been really looking to Margot for that coordination and for that effort and for those relationships. One of the mandates that we've taken on and taken to heart is that, Albany Hill used to be a site of tremendous cultural use and collection and acorns, and with Albany Hill dominated by eucalyptus right now, that isn't possible. And so part of the benefit of restoring native habitats to the hill is to create a healthy ecosystem that would allow the tribe to be able to do cultural use on the hill again and have the community engaged in that. I think that's the question you're asking.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah,
I appreciate that, and I recently started reading a book called Tending the Wild, and
it's a great book.
Yeah, and it's just not to. I'm not being paid by anyone to say that.
Yeah.
And so just this management of the land, I'm like, oh wow, it feels like so in line with this improvement that we're trying to do around for wildfire management.
Yeah, and I would encourage you to reach out to Margot and talk to her when she's feeling better about that, because they are doing a lot of work on the hill to try and really move that item forward.
Thank you. Yeah, and just to wrap up my comment, and just in general, I just feel like we've been asked to really implement and take action on our land acknowledgements, and I wasn't really privy to that necessarily. So just in general, I'd love to bring that up more with the commission and all across our city efforts. So thank you. And then just in terms of the survey, I hope that we can send that out in our newsletter that goes out this Friday. And social media, and if we can please update the presentation slides on the website. I think I'm looking at maybe an older version. So for the ones that you did today, do other folks?
They were uploaded today, so I think it's this. You've got a PDF handout that was just a summary. That was just the executive summary. I didn't want to hand you a 45-minute presentation to read before the presentation. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah, there's sort of a shortened PDF that came on. But I think this presentation will be uploaded to the website, and the survey, I think, is already online. And we're going to leave the handouts here that we printed, so if you want to distribute them or take them to other meetings or
Sharon, can you say what the deadline is for the survey?
I think it's kind of open. We're continuing to work, and I think, when Margot had the first online survey open, we'd collate the results, and she kept it open for quite a while. I'm looking at Jeff as though he might have an answer, but I don't think that's true. But
I don't recall.
There's
We
no
do have the
deadline.
Community Expo
Yeah.
coming up in April,
Yeah.
and I'm pretty sure we'd want to keep it open at least through that weekend.
yeah.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from commissioners?
Yes, I just want to say thank you. That was a great presentation, and I'm looking forward to the update in the spring. I want to hear more about it, the explorations, how you figure out the option, what would be the best route to take, expensive, a lot of questions, but thanks for the work.
And I had a couple more. for next time. So for next time, I would like to see a couple things in the presentation for us. One is, let's see, when do government regulations enter in for protection of an endangered species like the monarch? So that was something that we discussed a little bit, and it was kind of a new idea for me that there's like a federal or state, whatever, regulation that might impact the city's ability to decide which trees to cut down. So how is that defined? So how does one define legally protected monarch habitat? And I asked that, and you answered the best of your knowledge. It sounded like that was pretty informal to me, and maybe that's just how it is, but at some point, it's going to come to a tree-by-tree decision for removal, and if there's going to be a legal challenge, on what basis would that be? If a monarch is seen to land on a tree in a random part of the park, does that trigger a government protection? You know, does Stuart Weiss designate the official trees that are protected from removal according to government regulations? Does a Fish and Game government employee do that? Or is it really just the city's decision, and government regulations don't enter in to that? So I'd like to hear more clarification on that for the next one. And then also, I feel like I didn't ask the question very well to the fire chief, and I think I thought of a better way to ask. So I feel like I didn't get really an answer what I was hoping to hear, to understand to my question to the fire chief, that about would the regulations change for structures near the park, homes near the park, depending on what we do, what the city does on the hill. So I would request that the fire chief, the city, clarify that for the public, and potentially, because, for example, I would think the residents near if like how the trees are cut, if the state has some guideline that says if your house is this many feet from a forest or this many feet from a tree or something, then your protections on your house become like twice as expensive, or you have to do twice as much stuff, then they need to be publicly noticed. I would think they would need to get postcards about all of these meetings that, depending on so if that's the case, that what we decide on, what the city decides on for what kind of fire breaks or whatever to do near structures, if that impacts what regulations they fall under, then I think, and Jeff, you would know better than I would about public noticing, I would think, need postcards for every single meeting, our meetings, the city council meetings, to be able to have some input.
If you'd like, I can respond. I can know a little bit about this as well as the chief. CAL FIRE is going through a mapping process. It's very sophisticated. They look at the topography. Yes, the plantings and so forth, but it's also topography, it's wind patterns, it's density of housing. They're not going every acre of throughout the state. So what we do here is not going to affect the mapping at least of the draft that we see. We may be able to make some recommendations to that draft. Again, that's kind of a different agenda item than what you've got before you today. But I think you can, as for purposes of reviewing this plan, assume that it does not impact how the state fire marshal recommends the local responsibility area ultimately.
Okay, I think it does. Okay, thank you. That helps. Noticing is how our meetings are noticed. That's directly related to what we're doing, and so that's what my focus is on here. And so it sounds like what you're saying is that the state recommendations or maps are not going to be so fine-grained. They're just going to be like East Bay or California, whatever, some huge zoning or huge designation that won't take into account the hill being near a home or a tree or something like that. Is that what you're saying?
I'd feel more comfortable getting into the details if this was part of the agenda item, as a noticed agenda item.
Okay. So what I would request then is that
next time we come back.
Next time we come back, talk about what noticing may need to be happening for neighbors, and related to do our decisions on the city's decisions on the Hill impact what zoning upgrades and all the neighbors to the hill will need to have. Thank you.
If there's no, is there one more? Okay, go ahead, Jeremy.
Yeah, I wanted to thank the presenters for a good presentation. It's a good way for all of us to kind of collect our thoughts about this very complicated process. But I guess just a general kind of comment would be that, from my understanding, it appears that, like, with these like three like extreme plans, it seems that the most areas of conflict are like right along the ridge and on the west side of the hill. So I guess that is mostly the area that we would be focusing on, if it would be like the very specific nuances of that plan. But yeah, I'm not sure about that.
You raise a good point. I think it would be good, and I think in your presentation you talked about the different phases and what's dependent on what to some extent. But if some things are easy, if some regions of the hill are easy to satisfy the maximum goal of all three prongs, then if you could specify that, that would be great. Like we can do all three things. All the things that everybody wants to do in this region with very little trouble, but we really need to focus our efforts on this other part of the hill. And then that might also help phasing decisions be made as the things that just are easiest to do.
Then the presentation worked.
Okay, great.
Excellent.
It's part of the goal was to bring you all along on the thought process and how we come to these decisions and what we have to balance, so that when we do come to you with a recommendation, you have this in your head of how we got there. So.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Annika and Eric, for your presentation, Annika for sharing, and to all your hard work, and to everyone involved. So that concludes the presentation on the Albany Hill Management Plan. We're going to move into our next agenda item. Next agenda item is the Street Tree Management Plan update. Jeff Bond will be presenting, our Community Development Director. Is that okay? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioners.
Let me hand it over to you 1 second. So this is on an update on the Street Tree Management Plan, on the progress of it to the Commission, and yeah, let's get started.
Great, thank you. Again, Jeff Bond, the Community Development Director, working collaboratively with the Public Works Department on preparation of the Street Tree Management Plan. Our original idea was to have a little bit more detailed presentation on this evening, but in light of the presentation you just got, and giving ourselves a little bit more time to get it ready for you, I'm just going to give you a brief update to let you know what you can expect at your next meeting, hopefully, and what we're working on now, what the consultant team is working on right now. So as shown on the screen, they're taking a look at comparable cities, ordinances and policies and programs associated with street tree management. And we'll be able to kind of talk about what the whole spectrum of what different cities are doing. And associated with that, importantly, is the level of staffing and funding required to accomplish those things. And I think that really gets to the heart of what we're trying to do with our with this plan, is to align our staff resources and financial resources of the city with the programs that you would like us to do. We also want to get as much out of the Community Expo as we can. It's a great opportunity to engage a lot of people all at once, one-on-one. And so we're going to hopefully come up with some public education and outreach tools. We'd like to preview those for you at your next meeting. We want to get to eventually to working with a vision that just about everybody in the community can agree on. It's not going to, a vision being pretty high level, it's not going to go into all the details, but if we have a common shared vision, then it helps us get to the details. And again, start to craft that, but certainly not finish it until there's a lot of engagement and through, at the very least, the Community Expo, as I mentioned. And then we also want to start doing some individual outreach to people who've expressed interest in the plan on a one-on-one basis. been our experience that sometimes public meetings are great for some types of engagement. Other times it's just a phone call or a cup of coffee with somebody and you get a little bit more nuance back and forth. So we're going to start doing that. If commissioners have any suggestions, feel free to send them to any one of us. Or if you wanted to share any right now, but you don't have to do it right now, you can just drop us an email making a suggestion of people to talk to. We're happy to do that. And that would be a combination of city staff and or the consultant, depending on everybody's availability and scheduling and so forth. But we're going to try to start getting that going again over the next month or two, so that we can work towards a draft plan later in the late spring, early summer. So that's my update. I'd be happy to answer any questions and take any public comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Do we have any technical questions for Jeff?
I have a question, thanks. I think I know the answer, but is there any possibility for, if there's funding, I guess I'm just wondering about the timeline for any bond request, I mean, given the upcoming election?
Yeah, we're not going to have very good, I don't think we're going to be finished in time to have a good decision, be able to give good information to the council to make a decision about the 2024 ballot.
Okay.
They would need to make that decision at the latest in July. We're not going to be there. And I do know they're thinking about other things, both in the 2024 election and even now beginning to think about the 2026 election. So I would expect that this would be more likely a discussion that would lead to a measure in 2026.
Okay.
To decide if or how much the property owners would contribute to the cost.
If you said it, I didn't, it didn't register what the timeline, this is of course a very brief overview of what's going on behind the scenes here, but when we should expect this to come before the Parks Commission again?
I hope that we have a more substantive presentation to you next month. I'm not exactly sure what's going to be on your agenda, so if there's capacity on your agenda, we'll probably have a more substantive discussion. Again, I'll defer to my colleagues in Public Works in terms of managing your agendas. But as soon as we have a piece of work that's ready for your review, we'll bring it to you. And if it's not April, it almost certainly would be your May meeting.
And then when do you think it would go before the City Council?
When you're ready for it to go to the City Council, we would want you to review the draft and be prepared to make a recommendation to the City Council.
So that might be the final draft, or not the final, but...
Yeah, we would, I wouldn't want to bring, I'd want another intermediate check-in with you before bringing you a draft.
Okay. All right, that's it for me. Thank you.
Probably following the expo, right? Like, well, of course, it'll come a couple more times.
Right.
So it'll come before the expo, most likely, if we can, after the expo at some point, and then one more time again?
I would expect so.
Okay.
Yes,
We're
at least.
looking at maybe 3 more times we're talking about this.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll wait till discussion for my comment, actually. So, do we have any public comment?
No hands raised.
Okay, we can move to discussion now. I'll hop in then. So yeah, I think what I love about expos and community fairs and public events like that is you're getting an audience that isn't just coming for that topic. And so I just do really hope that we are advertising the community expo through all avenues possible. I'm not really tapped into the school system, but the school system, our social media pages, I see a lot of Albany residents really using Facebook. And so I encourage the city to continue to get more active on that and even say, like, at the Community Expo, you can come and tell us about A, B, C, not just Community Expo. There will be lots of tables and, but like, come talk to the city, we'll be there. Yeah, so that's my pitch about the expo and for a really successful street tree management plan.
Related to that, I would request the city for outreach ask what residents are using to get their information, like what platforms? I know a lot are using Facebook, some are using Nextdoor, some are using both. I don't know what other platforms people these days are using. And so that'd be good to hear where people are getting or would want to see the information from the city. Where does the city currently broadcast information about what our commission's doing or what's going on at the expo, that kind of thing?
I know that I'm not the person to push the button to send those things out. There are people who are much more sophisticated about that than that I rely on. There certainly are weekly e-news, and I do know we have some social media pages. I don't know the details of that.
Okay, all right.
I see some I'm not a heavy social media user, so I know there's an Instagram account that I see lots of things posted. I don't know if there are others or not.
Are there any last discussion comments?
Just thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so we'll move on now to expenditure. So the next item, which is a discussion and possible action on matters related to the expenditure of sugar-sweetened beverage tax. So we looked at a little bit at this last month. Jamara, I think I'll hand it over to you and to maybe recap us on why this is coming back to us and what it's about. So
Yes.
take it away.
This is a continuation from our last meeting, so that way we can recommend or discuss options for how to spend revenue from the SSB tax proceeds for fiscal year 2025 and provide a recommendation to City Council for consideration at their special study session, which is currently scheduled tentatively for April 15, 2024. So a little background: in November 2016, Albany voters voted on enacting a tax on the sugar-sweetened beverages. Every year, council will hold a study session to decide on how the money will be spent. They solicit recommendations from a number of organizations, including our commission, Social and Economic Justice Commission, Transportation Commission, and other designated sources. The council approved the fiscal year 2024 sugar-sweetened beverage tax. The plans included funding for the Crossing Guard program, the Healthy Me Music and Movement program, the Bike Safety program, the Albany Swims program, Move and Groove event to promote outdoor exercise and mental wellness, and a G7 access hub for the bike link lockers at the Albany waterfront. Some discussion on this. The city estimates to receive about $260,000 of tax for proceeds in the 2025 fiscal year. The council will consider recommendations for this use. For FY24, our committee recommended 4 projects to the council for consideration. These included additional recreational equipment on the Albany Greenway, an additional water bottle filling station along the Albany Greenway, Solano Ave, and as close as possible to the bulb, a new water source to the waterfront to support bottle filling and an outdoor shower, and a sand volleyball court. Unfortunately, none of these recommendations were incorporated into the final expenditure plan. At our last meeting, we presented the commission with 5 project proposals as a starting point for the discussion. These proposals meet the intended use of these funds, our current needs identified by staff, and are actionable within a fiscal year. The proposals include installing inclusive swings at park playgrounds, installing replacement exercise equipment along the Albany Greenway, constructing a sand volleyball court at Ocean View Park, installing a water bottle filling station at Ocean View Park, that would be east of the tennis courts and pickleball courts, and a new ball field equipment storage box. The intent was for the commission to review these and potentially other project proposals and provide direction to staff to further develop project details and costs for up to 3 options. The following that I'm going to present are more detailed project descriptions for the projects selected by the commission. So first, we're going to start with the Albany Greenway exercise equipment, and if you bear with me, I'm going to bring up an attachment for you guys to view. So first up, we have the Albany Greenway exercise equipment. Several pieces of equipment in the Albany Greenway exercise yard across from the senior center have failed beyond repair. The original equipment, which was installed in 2017, had numerous moving parts that were continually breaking and needing replacement. This project will remove the remaining elements of the failed equipment and install more durable equipment, which will have greater availability for users and require less maintenance. The failed equipment will be replaced with 2 pieces of equipment. What you see first is the arm bike pro and leg lift. If I go down, you can see how this would kind of work and all of the details regarding the arm bike pro. More dynamics and dimensions. We also will have a leg lift and pull-up. The Arm Bike Pro is an upper body strength cardio machine that has a crank similar to a bicycle. It can be used sitting, standing, or in a wheelchair. The leg lift and pull-up is a combined leg lift and pull-up station. Both pieces of equipment are expected to be more durable than the original equipment, as well as fit in with the rest of the equipment at the location. And I will continue to show you the details for the leg lift and pull-up machine. Those are the dynamics and those are the dimensions. The cost for this equipment would be budgeted at $30,000. Then we have the sand volleyball court. The purpose of this project would be to reactivate the little-used and dilapidated grass dirt volleyball court area at Ocean View Park near the community garden. One issue with the current court is the soggy soil, which limits its playability. Let's see. Nope. Need this to move. There we go. The scope of this project would include removing 12 inches of soil, placing new sand in an under drain system connecting an adjacent catch basin, and install new poles, netting, and boundary lines and localized grade to level the site for an under drain system. And I'll show you some more pictures of the dimensions of the court and potentially what it would look like. The budget for this came out to be a little bit more than $50,000. We have it budgeted at $60,000. And then, lastly, the water bottle filling station at Ocean View Park. This project would upgrade the existing aggregate drinking fountain located at the northeastern corner of the tennis courts with the upgrade or transition of the existing courts to permanent pickleball courts. This area will be more active and require additional amenities to support park users. The location of this drinking fountain is ideal to support the 4 permanent pickleball as well as the ball field. Upgrading this drinking fountain was not included in the initial budget for the pickleball conversion project. The project will replace the existing fountain, which is what you see now, with something similar to this water fountain. And we would locate it to a more accessible location. And we have a budget for this of about $15,000. And The purpose, the recommendation is that the commission discuss options for how to spend the revenue and provide a recommendation for city council to consider at their special study session.
Thank you so much, Jamira. Are there any clarifying questions for Jamira?
I have a question about the process. Do you know, is a study session where they take all their comments and decide? Do you know, like, if they talk about it for several meetings? The city council, I mean?
I'm not very familiar on how that process goes. Jeff, do you?
I think in previous years, they have talked about it in this study session. They make sort of a preliminary decision, and I think the final decision is when the rest of the budget is formally adopted usually in June. So
Yeah, so it still is probably where they're really making decisions.
the
next meeting is when they're making decisions, then, it sounds like.
yes, it would be I'd be surprised if they were to change their mind after having a discussion in
Yeah.
April.
Okay, thanks.
I had one question was, I see, so that's narrowed down to 3, and I appreciate the quotes and all, and the extra work that the staff put in to put all that together. I'm wondering, it might be too late, because I don't think this is coming before us again, is it?
No, because if it goes before the council, we wouldn't have another, we wouldn't be able to get them the information in
Right.
time for their next meeting.
Is it seems to me, it says we decided to narrow it down to 3. I don't remember the details on that, but the inclusive swing, for example, I'm just Googling it. It looks like you can buy one for under $2,000, and then staff could they're made to just swap in and out of an existing structure. So it seems to me that when the city council goes to decide on what to fund, how much, like what to actually choose, that there might be some like round off, or donate some pennies, round up your bill, you know what I mean? That something like that might, like an inexpensive item like that might be easy to fit into the leftovers.
Yeah, so these are just proposals, so if you guys have something else that you would like to recommend instead, feel free to vote for that instead. Like, this was just something that we thought would be easy and feasible to do within the time frame.
So if we're submitting ideas, and then the other groups, all the other commissions are also submitting ideas?
Yes.
and the council gets together and chooses from that list?
Yes.
So the more we submit, the less chances. I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's I mean, I don't know if we can just start talking, or we should,
Maybe we can wait for discussion, just because
Yeah.
I think we all want to comment on that, yeah, or a lot of us do. Do I have a specific question? Is your question,
Oh, did I jump to
Yeah.
decision?
It's like Jeopardy. You
I was
have to
trying to get an idea of,
phrase it in a question.
yeah, I have a tough time between discussion and question.
yeah, so I think your question was like, basically, is it limited, or are we going up against all other commissions, kind of like, and the answer was yes.
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
Right, and without knowing what they're presenting, I might like their idea better, but.
Without attending their commission meetings, we wouldn't know what they're presenting.
And it's not technically a competition. We're all trying.
Well, that's not, for lack of better words, I'm just trying to keep this
We're not
moving.
winning
So
or-
let's-
there's nothing
Not a
to
competition, we don't-
win.
it's a competition for the best idea. I want
Well, that's
the best idea.
then we need to present it very well, yes.
yes, that's right.
Let's go to our next clarifying question.
So, for the workout area under the Albany pathway, you said the budget's $30,000, and that's only for two
Machines. To remove the machines and then install those new machines. Yes, that's the budget for that.
entry. Oh, that seems kind of high.
It's very. But we are confident on those because we got those directly from the supplier themselves. So we are very confident on how much it would cost to replace the equipment. Sand volleyball is a little different because we didn't send it out to bid. We just kind of got a rough estimate from a contractor.
Okay.
My clarifying question is, how is the recommendation presented to the council? Is it in this format, or is is it basically in this format that we have here?
I want to say it's built out in a table and it lists like the details. For example, it'll list sand volleyball court, and then it'll list where it's going to be located, what's involved, and then it'll tell them the price. And it's just a table of all the recommendations.
Okay, do you know if the opportunity to explain it the way you have it here with the purpose and the scope is also possible, or no?
That's all in there.
Okay, it can be, or will be.
Yes.
All right, thank you. If there's no more clarifying question, oh, yes, go ahead, Commissioner.
Yeah, I have some, I guess, more niche questions, but I see that the first item for that I guess you guys have selected for the exercise equipment, it's the Arm Bike Pro. It appears that it has some kind of like smart functionality with like some kind of app. Would we actually implement that? And if so, like, could that cause like some kind of failure point in the future or something like that?
I'm not sure of. I didn't realize that it had an app function, but that's something that we can look into and let you know.
Okay, thank you. And then, sorry, just about the water bottle filling station. Would like the kind of, like fountain we would be replacing it with be like a combination, like regular water fountain and a bottle bodies?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Because this is going almost into commentary, but I've seen like many stations that are just a water bottle filling station, and I see people like attempting to drink out of them, and it's like,
Yeah, it would be both.
Okay.
There's a picture of it.
Thank you.
Scroll down.
Yeah, okay.
I guess one other follow-up question to that would be, would it include something for dogs? Do people have a sense of how dogs are?
That wasn't brought up, but it's something that I could ask and see if it'll raise the dollar amount or if it'll stay the same, but I can definitely ask.
Yeah, that would be, well, okay, when we get to comment.
Are there any more questions? Okay, do we have any, I know you're taking notes, so I'll give you a moment.
Oh, no, go for
Any
it.
public comment online?
Yes, hand just raised.
Go ahead, you have 3 minutes.
There, this is Amy Smolens, lived in Albany since '86. First, I just want to thank you guys, your body, for advocating to fund the 4 bike link lockers at the waterfront. They've been installed and are really terrific. They're larger than most of the existing lockers that you may have seen around at the BART stations. They accommodate long-tail bikes with child seats, which I'm sure you see that so many families in Albany use as transportation. Right now, since the new lockers they're using new technology, Bike Link's new technology. So right at this point, users need to use the app, which won't be a problem for many younger people. But I'll tell you that today I was out there and I successfully used the app to park my bike. So if I can do it, anyone can do it. So it works. So, and then eventually within the next year, you will be able to use cards. So I hope all you guys and the people at home will ride on out to the waterfront and use the app for secure parking in the bike link lockers if you're going to the Bulb or to the beach or taking a hike or anything like that. In the future, thank you. Please continue to use the proceeds from the Sugar-Sweetened beverage tax to fund long-term improvements which residents and visitors can use to live healthy lives, like the items that are before you. One specific question I do have is how much demand there's been for the sand volleyball court, because it's twice and 4 times as expensive as all the other options. So unless there's been a lot of demand, it doesn't seem like the greatest use of money, and also might be difficult since you, as you mentioned, you have the other commissions that are gonna have proposals as well. And I agree with Commissioner Martin's comments about the inclusive swing being basically pennies and being an efficient use of fund, and also the dog water station, which I've seen at most parks, and that's always used. And a lot of people around here have dogs. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
And I also have another hand raised.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you for taking my call. I live across the street from the exercise equipment on Masonic, and there are a few pieces that are no longer working right now, and I would suggest that you do have to install something there, since you guys did make that a exercise place for people to go to. So if you had to remove the ones that are not functioning correctly, it would be advisable for you to go ahead and place new ones there. Thank you.
Thank you.
A lot. Well, that's my talk. Sorry.
Okay. All right. Does that bring us to the end of public comment?
Yes, no more public comments.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks, folks. Okay, we're going to come back to discussion, and maybe it's just useful if I read the names of what was proposed at the last meeting. So of the items, so swing retrofit, exercise equipment, volleyball court, and water bottle filling station. I personally had forgotten as well, so I'll just use that to kick off our discussion.
I just wanted to respond to Amy Smollen's comment about the volleyball court and how much public comment we've seen. I know that a few of the new commissioners may not have been here when we had a conversation. Jameer, I think you were, right? So we had, as part of the flex court, we did that whole portable volleyball net. And so we just one little volleyball net, like temporarily situated at Memorial Park. I don't know how many, I would say over like 30 people came out to speak. Sand volleyball court enthusiasts, coaches, and, some people parents of kids that played volleyball. So I just wanted to make that note that I think there is strong interest. And it's interesting because there's so much interest in volleyball. Not only there's like a record-breaking number of girls trying out for volleyball at the schools, but there's also, you would know this too, there's now a boys volleyball team in the high school that's new, and there's boys volleyball at the middle school too. So I think there's a lot of enthusiasm, and we get a lot of competing demands for gym space. So basketball and volleyball are often like not able to practice as much as they could. I don't know that they'd ever use a sand volleyball court as recreation, but certainly it's a way to keep those skills up. And so just to respond to something that I think the community needs, I don't think there wouldn't be interest in the sand volleyball, just because I've seen as a parent of somebody in middle school and high school. So I just wanted to provide that context for whether or not there would be interest. But also I think it's good for us to let the volleyball enthusiasts know that there's an opportunity to comment on it. They probably didn't know that for tonight, but for the next, if we were to put it forward, that's something that they could comment on at the workshop or what a work study meeting for the commission, for the city council.
And I was going to say, kind of along those lines, I would want to be sure that when this is presented to council, we make a point about it's all genders are very excited about volleyball right now, and I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. Not all of our facilities appeal to everybody equally, and I think that's a good point. And I think we knew that was the big swing. We're going to put the big one there, maybe they'll go for that, and so we're not expecting everything to choose all of them.
And then also when it comes before the city council, the chair of each commission is requested to be at that meeting to provide some backstory, and staff is also there too. No pressure.
Okay.
Answer questions.
Didn't mention that last week, did we? Last month.
No.
So just real quick, so from my understanding, it's $30,000 because of the charge to remove the broken equipment?
To remove and install and the purchase of the equipment itself.
Got you.
Yeah, because it has to be professionally installed by them. We can technically replace some parts, but we want it to be professionally installed, so liability reasons and stuff like that.
Yeah. I kind of, when I look at that, I think a little bit gimmicky. The other ones broke down to the moving parts. It's like how many people are going to use it? Are there other ways you can exercise without that machine? using the same muscles. And I do think we need to put something there, because I hate the fact that just a step out, it looks like something's missing. It does seem like a big-ticket item for something that might break again or not be used much. I don't know, it's just my hunch, seeing these exercise equipment things. It's like, I don't know, the manufacturer's trying to come up with something new, and it looks interesting, looks really interesting, but I don't know if it's really used that much, and that's kind of the information
I believe these were picked mainly because it's right next door to the senior center. So if you have someone who's having mobility issues or something like that, and they need to get their arm strength up, then that's something simple and easy that they can do, even from a wheelchair. And then the leg lift and that one, most people are pulling up on anything that they can pull up on. So this gives them a firm option where they won't necessarily hurt themselves, so.
And there isn't any kind of exercise equipment in the senior center, right?
No exercise equipment in the senior center. And I've actually seen a lot of kids from the preschool who also use the equipment, so it's a lot of people out there.
I use it, I mean, I like it too, but I don't use all the equipment, I don't use.
I definitely see people using it, so.
I think this would be very popular.
Yeah.
I think this would be popular, yeah. And I noticed that the electronics warranty is only 2 years. So there we go, there's your answer. Everything else is 10 years.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think you could still use it, right? I mean,
You would
you could still use it without that function.
You would still be able to use the equipment. The app just may or may not work, and that's something that, like I said, I'll look into and see what can be done about that.
I guess related to that is to look into, does it require electricity, or is it more, you're like the hamster wheel that's generating the power to run whatever electronics the app communicates with? I mean, how does that work?
I'm going to assume that it does not require electricity. It might be something that you just simply, like if you go to the gym and you scan the little thing and then it pops up on your phone and then that's how you deal with it. I'm thinking it might be something similar to that, like it might be all in the machine itself, because there's not going to be any electrical power going to it. So it's not like it's getting plugged into anything.
It's the resistance is provided by electric motor. So you're actually generating energy. And no doubt, to increase the resistance, it's just adding more load. That's what's happening. So yeah, it's an electric generator.
Okay.
So what they need is a charging port, because then.
For your phone?
Charge your phone while you, and that would be some incentive to exercise for the teens and everybody, really, yeah.
Has to earn it. Okay.
Let's see, yeah, I think I'd be fine with sending all 3 of these on, plus the
swings.
I was wondering why that disappeared too. I thought maybe that was small enough ticket. Mark was just saying, well, we're just going to find a way to do that anyway.
Yeah.
I kind of think that's what
That's
what I was thinking.
It's so small. It's such
Well,
a small.
but it is. But on the other hand, there's 3 parks, so it's
Yeah.
times 3, and it adds up. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how much discretionary.
Yeah.
I would say, I mean, I think we do want to be a little bit strategic. I mean, I feel like the water bottle filling station is the most relevant, but it's also, there already is a water, it's not like
It's true.
there already is water source there. So I just, it seems like a big ticket right now for something that's already, it's okay. It's not ideal, but, so I don't know if we want to maybe think strategically, because we keep on, I know it's not a competition, but we keep on failing every time we put these forward. So it is, I do think we should maybe be thoughtful about not putting too many in front of them, because.
Oh, we're doing 3.
3, I think 3.
We've done like 6 in the past. So.
Yeah. But then also, we might want to prioritize, right? We might want to say, this is our top, that, number 2, 3, and I think
If you-
Hurley will do a good job representing all 3, but if we want to advocate for one over,
If you wanted to squeeze in the 4th, I can also bring that back to Mark and let him know that these are the absolute 4 that they want. And like Commissioner Martin said, the swing will probably be like the least expensive thing to do. So if we squeeze that in at number 4, I think that would be doable. But once again, I'm not sure, so I'll defer to Mark for that.
I mean, I personally feel like the most value are the top two. The most value to the community and the most number of people who would benefit, net benefit would be both those two at the top, and that I would advocate for just putting those top two. But that's my opinion, so.
I think that the volleyball court will transform the use there. That's going to really transform that area. The exercise equipment will enhance something that's already happening, as with the water feature, same thing. Make something that's already there a little better. But volleyball is totally different.
Yeah, we're activating a space that's really dead. And, there's something to be said. I mean, I'm going to go attend that meeting, but I think there's a public comment that could have been like a $250,000 bocce ball court. So we're saving the city money in a way by not pushing that forward, right? Instead of doing something that's more, we don't even need a public process because it's already volleyball. It's already
It's already volleyball.
So that's another thing about, like, I think they were hesitant when I listened to that last year's meeting. They were hesitant to put forward something that wouldn't be able to be done in the fiscal year, that would take a lot of planning. But I think Mark's showing something here that's feasible and in budget and can be done. So.
Done within the year, yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, my understanding to the other water bottle filling station, and I don't say this because I think it should happen now, but is that it's planning as a part of the updates, like it's next to the update to the tennis court. Is there an update? I think there's an update to the tennis court, right, as a part of the Prop 68 funding. I just remember Mark saying something like, and this is going to go well together with this other update or improvement. And so maybe that's something also, like, yeah, we can come, it's like a part of the longer term vision for Memorial Park that maybe, and we could open it up here and see what it says. But yeah, I also feel like there's a if water bottle station, filling station nearby already, and I would say, and I am open to like also putting like as a part of our motion, maybe including like the priority, low order of the priorities. And then my last comment is just, if we have the opportunity to put the language of purpose and scope of, and I understand Mark is probably gonna pitch it and I'm gonna be there, but of writing in here some of this reasoning a little bit more, including, because I think that's a great opportunity. People are gonna read this, city council members need to review this beforehand and process it, digest it, and we're saying things that aren't really in here right now, including all of that support for volleyball. And then on the side of the Albany Greenway, like why those items I'm seeing more durable, but fits in with the rest of the equipment. Like, I don't know what that means. I don't know what fits in with the rest of the equipment means. Yeah, so thank you.
I would add that I actually think the water filling station would be one of our highest priorities because it's, so I think it should be definitely one of the ones we put forward to the city council is my sense of it. Yes, there's already something there, but that's why it's relatively cheap to put this other thing there, because Mark was explaining that, well, the water lines are already there, we just have to run a pipe over a few feet to make it that's closer to where the courts are, that we're gonna upgrade all this stuff, and so it's going to get a lot more use, and plus there's all the ball fields right there, which I think that's the only water for that.
That one they show is right next to it.
Is like the other functional one? It's next to the Friendship Club, right?
Oh,
Yes.
okay, next to
Picture
Friendship
is the
Club.
other.
So that's already there.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then there's been one near the field on the, I guess, the third base dugout, but it's always full of sand.
I was gonna say, it's always full of
always full of
sand, it's
sand.
very dirty, and it's not really used.
I think that's the
Okay.
one that we're trying to replace.
Yeah, that's the one that we would like to replace with the new
Well, the
water.
one we're replacing is actually on the side of the tennis court right now.
Yeah, that's
But
the
on the
one
third-
that's
the
always
third
full
base.
of sand.
Well,
Are you-
maybe there's more than one always full
Are you,
of sand.
are you saying that the one that's by the Friendship Club is?
No. Well, maybe the one I'm talking about is gone. I don't know. It's been a few years.
There used to be one that looked like the one that was on the side of the tennis court, but I believe that got removed when
Okay.
they,
Well, because it was always full of sand.
yes,
Very
because
good.
it was always full of sand, and then they put in the new water filling station.
Does that one near the tennis court work now?
No.
Doesn't work at all.
I believe it works. Whether or not I would use it is.
Mark said it didn't work last.
I think it like dribbles out something, but I wouldn't use it.
So I like all three of these. I don't really feel a need to put a priority on them just because there's three different tiers. We're giving them a choice. You know, if you've got 60,000, they're very different things and very different tiers. There's, the second one is half of the first one.
There you go.
Third one is half of the second one. But that's just, yeah.
I guess I just have a few things, like, number one, to answer that public comment we got earlier about the exercise equipment, under the $30,000 that we could propose, that would include both removing the current ones and replacing them with new machines, so we're not just going to be removing the non-functioning machines, I guess. And then, as for the water bottle water bottle filling station, I understand that was in our previous project plan, but yeah, there is that functioning water station that's just on the, like, this, I don't know, the northwest corner of the tennis court, like, around that area, so I guess if we were to have priorities, that might be a bit lower, just because it would be definitely improving a situation, but not necessarily that there's nothing there right now. But
Yeah, so I retract some of what I was saying there about the water, because I see now that there is already a water bottle filling station a few feet away. It'd be nice to have something upgraded right there at the tennis courts, pickleball courts, but yeah. I don't, but like Todd, like Commissioner Abbott was saying, that it does hit a certain price point, and so we got nothing from our list last year selected. If we get one thing from our list this year, it's going to fit into some slot probably.
So we should put the.
That's a concern, though. Like, do we want to just win the one little thing? I think it's more, I would rather put
The
forth.
city is winning, okay? We're not winning, the city is winning.
Do we want our suggestion? I guess my question is what's the meaning, right? Like, and if it's not that, even if that's what they accept, I just worry that we put something forward and they're like, okay, 15,000, we'll do that one. Do we really want them to pick that one, right? It's like, just strategically.
Provides them an option if they're looking at all the commission requests or recommendations, and somehow, again, we're at the bottom of the list, and they're like, well, what can we add from parks? They grab it, throw it into the budget.
It very directly answers the sugar-sweetened beverage. I mean,
I think
does.
that's the best argument for it, is I think it's actually directly, it's very relevant to what the intent of the legislation is. I would personally like to have the priority list, but the commission has to agree, and then I can make a public comment too, as not on behalf of the commission, but just as a public person about the rankings.
I think we should add the swings at 7,500, because then it's half again. There's an elegance.
Yeah.
Which means the sand volleyball court should be first.
Well, sure, that's fine.
Okay, so I feel kind of facilitating here a little bit. I'm hearing two things: the decision as to whether to add the swing to the list, and two, the decision as to whether to add a priority ranking or just leave it as like a list of options. So those seem to be the two decisions on the table.
I guess, sorry, just small interruption before we, I guess, decide, but I guess the sand volleyball court, it does feel like it's only been like a month since we've even proposed this, so it does feel like, I don't know, I guess very quick, but again, if we could get this done within a year, that'd be like light speed for government standards. And I understand, I guess, the previous plan with the whole bocce ball court didn't really go through, so yeah, I think definitely it could be a good option, just about that.
I think it might be good to add the swing in, because they might add it up and say, well, we got $2,000. There's something.
Yes, I think we should add the swing.
I'm going to add a piece of information that will probably support the volleyball court a lot. I went and used the volleyball nets that you can rent, and sorry, I'm gonna like speaking very slowly, but like you can like pull out onto the tennis court at Memorial Park, right? So I did this. Has anyone else done this? You did? Okay. Well, I was seriously concerned about the weight of the bases. I had to like, it took 3 to 4 people to pull it out, 4 to pull it back out. I provided the feedback, and again, so the weight is like almost concrete. Like it was, I'm telling you, it was bad. If that had just fallen on my foot, and I am like decently, like I can carry things, and I had 2 other athletic people with me. So anyway, all this to say, I provided the feedback, and what I heard back from the parks person that called me was, basically, this is the only way. And there was no productive path forward in that conversation. I heard, this is the only, we don't have a place to put these poles in. This is the equipment that was like recommended to us. Something to that effect, and I had to go, I had to continue with my day. But that is not a promising path forward for that flex court, because I would not want to see those concrete bases remain.
Yeah, and I think I should check back, because we did a lot of research to find which ones would be light enough. So I wonder if maybe the wrong ones were purchased. I need to just follow back up with that to find out. But my husband went there with my daughter, and he said it wasn't so easy, but he did it himself. But, he didn't think it was super easy. So, yeah.
Well, happy to continue to work with you on that, or talk about that.
So, well, that's not on the agenda, but are you saying that therefore it would be nice to have a permanent volleyball net?
That makes me think that if that fails, or if that doesn't remain because of the uncertainty I heard from the city employee when I spoke with them, then of course we would want another option. And hopefully both can exist. Hopefully we can solve this and both can exist. But so I'll just say that. But why don't we get multiple volleyball court options out there?
So I'm going to move that we ask that they add the swing item back in, and Mark may come back and say, oh, we talked about it, we're going to do this, and that's fine. But as far as this, that's what I'm going to say. We can decide.
Yeah, and I would say, and you're right, Mark may have, I forget what he said.
I remember.
He may have said, oh, I've got some other budget I can use. I don't remember. But what I would recommend also is just say one swing, don't say enough for every park or something, and then whoever it is can make the case for, like, we have this amount of money left over, let's just buy one, or we have enough for 2, or we have enough for 3. The city council can always decide how many to actually buy.
Yeah, sorry, do you want to go? Okay, I think, I don't know if I remember correctly, but I think when our public works director first proposed that swing, I think it was just for Terrace Park, I believe.
It could have been just for one park.
Yeah. I don't remember the specifics, but yeah.
Which is fine too, so that's even more reason to request one.
Say at
least one.
Well, I would also say that if Mark actually says that they have in the budget and that's why he doesn't want to include it, I would defer to that. I mean, we don't want to just put something in there that we don't need to. So,
Todd, can you update your motion?
Can
you restate your motion?
Well, my motion was to add the swings back in, so I'm not sure that's. What was the term for the swing?
All-inclusive swing.
Yeah, so
retrofit.
I suggest, I'm moving that we add an item to add at least one all-inclusive swing to the parks. I don't know if we want to specify Terrace Park or not, but that would be my motion. At least one all-inclusive swing.
With or without a priority list?
Well, see, that's a different item.
Okay.
I'm agnostic
Okay,
on the
too
priority
much.
list. I made my case. I don't think it matters myself, so.
I'm trying to avoid the motion amendments.
Yeah.
So we have to do that motion first, right? We have to.
You can amend it, amend it.
Oh.
I'm going to retract my motion if she amends it with that.
There's a whole process for that, which I'm
sorry.
We're gonna be
I'm
particular
teasing.
about
I'm
it.
sorry. I shouldn't. Yeah.
Let me see.
Rules.
So, okay, here we go. So, let's see, you're gonna edit the motion. modify the motion. So, nope, give me a second.
Doesn't the person who's making the motion have to modify? I don't know.
I would
the
modify.
specific-
Well, somebody can add, but.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay.
To clarify your motion, is it to keep the three that are in the staff report and then add this as a fourth?
That is my.
Okay, because there has been some debate about taking some
You're
out.
absolutely right. That is my
add-
suggestion. Yeah.
Okay,
that's-
so the motion is
To add back in.
to have 4 items, the 3 in the staff report, plus an inclusive swing. Okay, all right.
And my understanding of amendments is if someone amends it and this amendment gets a second, then you move forward with the second one. If it does not get a second, you bounce back, you fall back to the original motion.
Right. And it hasn't been seconded the first time.
Second.
Okay, now it has been. Very good.
Well, from there, I don't know. It's been a while.
So what's on the table is 4 items with the 3 that were on the staff report and adding the swing.
Right.
And since I have a second, I'm going to go ahead and, okay.
I have a question, sorry.
Yes.
Just because before we do the vote, which is fine. I mean, I'm happy to vote for this, but we can still do another motion,
Yes,
right?
of
Okay.
course.
Yes. Okay, Commissioner Abbott?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang Frank?
Yes.
Commissioner Chin?
Yes.
Commissioner Kent?
Yes.
Commissioner Martin?
Yes.
Commissioner OG?
Yes.
And Chair Sandberg?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Motion passes.
We just need to make a list and vote on the whole thing. We don't have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, that's my fault.
Okay, so I'll do a motion to prioritize, and I would prioritize with I guess we have to discuss this, but I would advocate for sand volleyball 1, the equipment 2, kind of going in that ranking order, exactly with the amount, and then 3, the water filling, and then 4, the swings. So that's my motion.
I'll second that.
Okay. Commissioner Abbott?
Yes?
Commissioner Chang Frank?
Yes.
Commissioner Chin?
Yes.
Commissioner Kent?
Staying because I don't understand how that's going to work.
Commissioner Martin?
Yes.
Commissioner OG?
Yes.
And Chair Sandberg?
Yes.
Motion passes.
So now do we need to approve the whole thing?
I also want to say, Chair Sandberg, that I'm happy to do a little write-up if you, and I don't know how we would do this, but to send it to, in terms of some history, to send it to Mark, just so he has it, if he wants to include it in the presentation of the volleyball stuff, because it's very much the research we did as a flex subcourt.
If you would like to email him or me, and I can make sure he.
I'll email you, yeah.
Yeah, email it to me, and I'll make sure he gets it, so that way he has it for.
If he wants to incorporate it, okay, great.
Yes, no problem.
And if you don't mind sending it to the whole commission too, just because if the chair is presenting, then she'll see it too.
Yes, I'll make sure to send it once you.
That makes sense. Okay, that closes that agenda item.
Oh, sorry, I didn't have anything. Yeah.
Okay. And so I just want to be clear, Jamira, you have the order written down?
Yes, I
Yeah.
wrote it down.
Can you
and
restate it?
Or
please, would
You
you mind
said
restating
restate
it?
it?
Yeah.
So priority number 1 is the sand volleyball court. Priority 2 is the Albany Greenway exercise equipment. The number 3, the water bottle filling station. And number 4 is to add the inclusive swings back in, unless for some reason Mark has that budgeted elsewhere, then he will decide to take that out and we'll just go with the 3.
Right, and just one swing.
Yeah, just one swing, and if for whatever reason the city council decides to make it one at every park, then that will be on them.
Because I'm saying that just, how does this work when you present it? It has a priority already listed, or you go and present it? If they ask the question, you say this is
It depends on how Jamira can write it, but I imagine we can put something like the following is in order of priority that the Parks Commission decided. And then and then I'll restate it when I present.
I don't want to undermine something because, right.
Yeah. And I know we're working within a larger structure of multiple commissions submitting requests. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, right.
Sure. So if there's an opportunity to write it out, then I think that's what we're aiming for. Opportunity to write out, these are the priorities.
Well, we already gave them their most favorite item, why are we going to give, you know, that, rather than seeing the thing for what it is, they see it as something we don't value.
Or I don't think I'm understanding.
Rather than seeing each item as something of value and the council choosing what's best on the list, they see a priority, and they say, okay, we'll take the top 2 priorities from planning commission. And then, I don't know, it seems to me that, I'm not quite sure how the priority will work in the grand conversation. Maybe it'll work perfectly, but I'm just confused how it all falls.
I mean, my intent is that we don't get, I mean, we could, it's just a way to communicate to them. I mean,
That we think.
yeah, it's just that we may
That
rank.
works. So
sand
I like the
volleyball.
priority. I have no problem with that.
Yeah, I think like, well, it's up to them if they want to, if they have like $15,000 that they have left, that they'll just pick one of them. But it's, yeah, like Commissioner said, like it's just for us to communicate what we've talked about here.
Yep.
to them, yeah.
Next agenda item, the subcommittee reports. Are there any flex court subcommittee reports? I don't s-
No, I would take the opportunity to mention that you mentioned that for you it was difficult, or you found it difficult to move the nets around. Something else we discussed was having like the hand crank elevated net at a court that's not used for tournaments.
Yeah.
And so that is something that, like at Terrace Park, for example. And so that would be a potential solution for some of that. So that's something we've reported on before. Just wanted to mention that here now because it came up again.
Just so that I can point out something, this is basically what it looked like when it was presented, so I'm just gonna share my screen so that you can see. So it basically would look something similar to this with the description and the price. And if you guys want, we can number it 1, 2, 3, 4, so that way they can have an idea of the ranking order, but
Yeah. That wasn't us though, was it? Was that?
this is everything.
That was what was actually spent.
Yes, this was a total of everything. So it's based, Mark, I believe, is going to put something similar to this and present it.
This might work perfectly, because ours will be the only one that says priority 1 on it.
But yeah, I just wanted to share this is what they adopted last year, but yeah.
That's helpful, thanks.
Thank you. We're going to move to future agenda items, and I'll kick us off just by an update to an item I requested last meeting. And so Mark's been looking into, and Mark and Jamara, I imagine, have been looking into how to sort of kind of take away the flex court subcommittee. I think that's something we wanted to do, like it lived out his life, and so how do we like properly close that up? And I think like a proper report is a part of that. And then also bring up or put forth a new subcommittee, which I had, we sort of formulated around an Ohlone Greenway activation plan. I don't really want to call it a management plan. I think it's really about like how to make the most of that space, right? So because of tonight's focus, Mark said we can likely bring it to the following meeting. So that's an agenda item that we may see on the next meeting agenda. Are there any other future agenda item requests?
I just wondered if there's anything we wanted to do about the comment we got at the start of the meeting about the dog park plans. Was there, you need to watch that.
I can actually comment on that because I spoke to him earlier today, and I recommended that he speak here tonight because he could do it in the public comment. But I gave him the plans to review from the December meeting, and he went over them, and he will be speaking with Andre tomorrow about getting further input from the community, as well as talking to him about the placement of the dog door in the small park and all of that. So I did put him in contact with Andre, and hopefully they'll be speaking tomorrow about that.
So just for Andre, you know, the history is that Brian and Julie and I canvassed the neighborhood and talked to the dogs, so it's been a while. But if they need some additional input, we have that input. So.
Well, and also, I wish I had, or someone had told him he can also email our commission, to any member of the public, and if they email our commission, we can also respond to them individually. And there's things that, being on that dog park subcommittee, you know, we can describe the whole process that we went through to get input from everybody. And also, it sounds like you're already working with them, which is fantastic. And and also I try to explain why some of the decisions were made the way they were, and it sounds like the city staff can do that as well. And yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Mr. Abbott.
Other than that, no.
And then as far as staff goes, it sounds like we might get the tree management plan next month.
I expect so, yes.
And Jamira or Jeff, do you know anything else that might come before us?
No, not off the top of my head, I don't recall.
I might have some notes on that real quick. Rec department, I think we're getting like a rec department presentation.
Yes.
Capital improvement project. And yeah, and that's it, that hasn't already been mentioned. And I think there was one more. Oh, I just want to clarify about that. You just mentioned that if we get an email from the public, we all get it?
Yeah, if someone
It goes
emails,
to like Jamira and she kind of
if
filters
someone,
it.
no, if somebody emails prosk@albanyca.org, it immediately goes to all of our inboxes and to staff. And then we're, without breaking you could correct me if I'm wrong, but without violating the Brown Act, we can each individually respond to that person. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, because you all are blind copied on any email. So like when I send out the agenda, I just send it to the parks email address, and then you guys are all copied on it.
Okay.
And just be sure you reply to the sender, not to the process.
Yes.
Address that way.
Do not
Good to know.
reply
Thank
all.
you. Good to know.
And they're usually delighted to hear from you. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I thank you for your, thanks for this work and, you know, for racing through my first meeting. And
Good job, by the way.
Yeah.
well, we'll see you. Meeting is adjourned at 9:33, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jamira and Jeff.
You're welcome.